She was graceful, noble, and mysterious. A Cherokee princess who married a settler and passed down her royal blood. Nope, that's not how this works. Let's talk about the myth of the Cherokee Princess. Because if you've ever heard someone say, my great-great-grandmother was a Cherokee princess, you're not alone. Heck, I was told that as a child myself. It's one of the most persistent and most fictional claims in American family lore. My brother tested our DNA, and as it turns out, spoiler alert, no native DNA in our gumbo. But we did test positive for Viking. Another time you encountered the native princess is in folktales. I've covered two such folktales, the story of Nakalula Falls in Gadsden, Alabama, and the Singing River in Pascagoula, Mississippi. Both were stories of native princesses caught in some sort of Romeo and Juliet scenario that ultimately ends with her taking her own life out of heartbreak. But here's the truth. The Cherokee did not have royalty. No kings, no queens, no princesses. Leadership was clan-based, matrilineal, and democratic. There were no arranged marriages or political couplings. So if your ancestor was influential, she might have been a beloved woman or respected leader, but she was not a tiara-wearing Disney character. The myth took off in the 1800s, fueled by dime novels, Wild West shows, and Victorian romanticism. White audiences loved the idea of a noble native maiden, tragic, exotic, and conveniently silent. It was a way to claim indigenous heritage without confronting the uncomfortable colonial history. Let's invent one just for fun. Princess Ayita of the River Moon. She speaks fluent hummingbird, dances with wolves, and once saved a settler from a bear using only her wisdom and a dream catcher. Sounds magical, but it's fiction, and that's the point. Instead of chasing imaginary royalty, let's talk about real Cherokee women. Nanyeehaw, or in American, Nancy Ward, advocated for peaceful coexistence with European Americans and, late in life, spoke out for Cherokee retention of tribal hunting lands. Werta, mother of Major Ridge, who shaped Cherokee leadership, or countless unnamed matriarchs who held families and communities together. These women weren't princesses, they were powerful. The princess myth might seem harmless, but it erases real history. It turns indigenous identity into a costume, something to wear, not understand. So the next time someone says they're descended from a Cherokee princess, ask them, does she know Santa or the Loch Ness Monster?
Did you know Monroe, Michigan, had its own Cherokee princess who mingled with celebrities and even predicted World Series wins? It's quite a story.
Right. The article by Rick Grassley really digs into it. This woman, Loretta May Navarre, led a fascinating life, wasn't actually Cherokee, and her parents weren't Romanian immigrants.
Okay, so what's the real story behind her background?
Well, born in Monroe in 1885, she later married John Rhodes and then Victor Royal, who was an actor. It was during her marriage to Royal that she started performing as Princess Waletka.
Ever heard of a Cherokee princess who was also a celebrated concert singer? Well, get ready to be amazed.
Right, this photo from...
Ever heard the old line, my great-grandmother was a Cherokee princess? Why is that such a common claim?
Well, Evening Rain actually wrote about it. It's like a go-to story that many non-native people pull out of a hat.
Right, so it's usually a surprise, and these folks think...
Hello. So I want to talk a little bit about genealogical fraud, the untold truth behind the $5 Indians and the Cherokee Princess lie. So let's stop pretending this isn't happening. In the U.S., we are witnessing the largest genealogical identity theft in the Western Hemisphere, a deliberate government-enabled, socially protected erasure of real indigenous people. And it all ties to the same myth. My ancestor was a Cherokee princess. No, she wasn't. And here's the real story. The Dolls Rolls, the original identity crime scene. Between 1887 and 1907, the U.S. government opened the Dolls Rolls to assign Native people individual allotments of land. White settlers realized that if they were enrolled as Indians, they could receive land, money, tax exemptions, federal benefits, and tribal citizenship. in future generations. So thousands of white people, white families, paid $5 to be fraudulently listed as Native. This is not folklore. This is documented federal history. Sources: Angie Debo and Still the Waters Run. Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz, An Indigenous Peoples History of the United States. And U.S. Department of Interior, Dawes Rolls Investigations. Look it up yourself. The Cherokee were the #1 target. Why the Cherokee? Because colonial society erased and collapsed dozens of Eastern tribes on paper, leaving most settlers aware of only one tribal name: Cherokee. So fraudulent applicants overwhelmingly chose Cherokee as their invented identity. This is why millions of people claim Cherokee ancestry today, while real Cherokee enrollment remains relatively small. This is not math, it's mythology. The identity script and the Cherokee Princess lie is a real thing. White families needed a believable story to justify their fraudulent Indian identity. So they crafted a script. My ancestor was a Cherokee princess. How many of y'all heard that? I've heard it so many times. I've spoken with people who said this. It became the American folklore, equivalent of a password, a prepackaged alibi, repeated generation after generation. Sources: Cersei Sturm, Becoming Indian, Gregory Smithers, The Cherokee Diaspora. Look those up. These scholars document exactly how white Southerners constructed, invented Native identities using this trope. This is not made up. This is a documented fraudulent lie. Genealogical fraud versus genealogical truth. Now, here's the difference. Fraudulent claim: no paper trail, no tribal connection, no documented ancestors, no connection to community, no land records, no census references, no oral history from Native families, just rumors, just the mythical princess that we hear day in and day out. Real indigenous lineage, you're going to have tribal surnames that appear in 16 through 1800s records. You're going to have land deeds, treaties signed by their actual ancestors, colonial documents naming their families, census rolls, tax lists, muster rolls, burial grounds that match family lines, oral history retained within the tribal community, genetic clustering consistent with tribal kin networks, multi-generational paper trails that match historical movement. Fraud leaves fog. Truth leaves footprints. Remember that. And yet, look who gets harassed. Here's the part nobody wants to talk about. People with documented tribal lineage, people with land deeds, archival surnames, burial grounds, community recognition, and DNA clustering are the ones constantly questioned, bullied, denied, and harassed. We're called fake, pretendians, wannabes, race shifters, identity thieves, culture vultures, and the names go on. Meanwhile, the loudest voices calling real indigenous people fake are often those with no tribal documentation, those repeating family rumors, those relying on Victorian-era fantasy princesses, those descended from fraudulent Dawes Rolls enrollments, or those who simply enjoy gatekeeping indigenous identity online. So let's be real. Please listen. Some of the harshest critics on social media, especially in so-called Native identity groups, are the $5 Indian descendants, projecting their insecurity onto the people with real bloodlines, real records, and real tribal connections. So, clarification. Let me expand this thought clearly. There are white passing indigenous people with deep, verifiable tribal lineage. I know them. I've spoken with many of them. You know them. Many families in the East are mixed or layered. And complexion doesn't erase ancestry. So let's be clear. Looking white does not make you a $5 Indian. The difference is this. The real ones have genealogical bloodlines, paper trails, archival surnames, community acknowledgement, and in many cases, DNA trees linking them to known tribal kin. Migration patterns that align with tribal history. While the $5 Indian descendants have, I heard we have a Cherokee princess. It's rumored our grandma was Cherokee. Somebody in the family said we had Indian blood. We always thought. I feel it spiritually. So one is history, the other is hearsay. Now the descendants of real Tuscarora, Wakama, Wakan, Saponi, Meherrin, Catawba, all of your Eastern Woodland nations. Here's what we have. Documents, land records, tribal surnames, burial grounds, colonial references, treaties, migration trails, ancestral communities, oral histories, and ceremonies, and more. Yet, we are the ones questioned, bullied, denied, called fake, pretending in every derogatory name you could think of. And the loudest critics, often the very same people whose only evidence is a great-great-grandma who might have been a Cherokee princess. You can't make this up. You don't need to. History already did.